Hi everyone, welcome back to your next lesson. This is Stephanie here, and today we're talking about blessing herbs. I'm super excited about going over this lesson with you guys. It's one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to the herbal world. It's one of my favorite ways to use the herb. You'll probably hear me say that a lot. They're all my favorite ways. But I used blessing herbs probably before I used any other herbs, and a lot of you are going to hear some of the herbs that we're using, and you're going to think, oh, I've done that. I've smudged with sage, or I've used frankincense for something. So I think it's going to be really familiar to you, and it's also a really easy way that we can connect with the plant spirits, and use them in our ritual work or in our everyday lives. So today we're going to be talking about why we would be using the blessing herbs, the different ways to use them, and then we're going to go over some of my favorite blessing herbs and give you some information so that you can get to know them a little bit better, and hopefully this will help you to choose the right blessing herb for the right occasion, as well as help you to kind of connect and see if you can and use the blessing herbs on your own and figure out what they're meaning to you, or connecting a little bit deeper. I think about blessing herbs and I think about smudging, and for those of us who've done it, we may have used an invocation, we may have just lit the sage, we may have done it over doorways, but are we really connecting with the plant spirit? Are we really connect with the sage itself to see what kind of a spirit it has, what kind of a friendship we can build with it, and really respect the plant? Because when we do that, we make that connection, the plant is going to give that much more back to us. So just like a friendship, you're going to notice this is a theme along many of the lessons. The way I look at plant spirit medicine, it's almost like they're people. They are personified for me. So I try to treat the plants the way I treat my friends. And if I want my friend to be a good friend and give back, I have to give as well. So that's really a big theme of this class, and I think that the blessing herbs is a great way to show that, especially for those of us who have used blessing herbs before. And once you kind of have that knowledge of connection, what happens to the blessing herbs the next time you use them? Sacred smokes. And some people are going to want to know, well, aside from clearing out negative energy, what are the other reasons why we would use the blessing herbs? The blessing herbs feed our connection to spirit. They can be conscious altering. We use them to offer blessings to the spirit world. We use them to call forth spirits and guides, ancestors, plants, divine spirits, all of that into our sacred council and circle. So we also use them as a way to sync up together with that which is ancient and nourish and awaken our own spirit. So what does that mean? Well, the blessing herbs are a really great way to connect with spirit. And when you think about the smoke is not physical or tangible, right? You can't grab onto it the way you can grab onto earth. So smoke is the closest thing that we have to the spirit world. It's there. We can see it. We can feel it. We can smell it. It's semi-tangible, but we can't grasp a hold of it, right? So this smoke, the sacred smoke, is a great representation of our spirit world. And when we burn certain incense or certain smokes, it can help us to ask those spirit guides of ours to come to us. It can connect us to our ancestors. It can awaken the divine spirits, or the spirits of the plants. It's a really beautiful and sacred way to do this. It's also a very ancient way. When we think about sage, we think about the Native Americans. When we think about myrrh or frankincense, these are also very, very old sacred rituals that even the Catholic Church uses today. So all of these sacred smokes are steeped in this very, very spiritual connection that we have from this world to the other. You can see some really popular blessing herbs. These are not all the blessing herbs. In fact, any herb can be used as a blessing herb in some way, shape, or form. We're going to be talking about some of these in a little bit more detail. So we'll be going over some of those in a minute. As you can see, there's a big difference in some of them. We've got the trees from pine and cedar, dragon's blood, and then we've got things like tobacco or myrrh. So there's quite a different array of herbs, and we're going to be using each of these herbs in a different way when it comes to the blessing herbs. We're going to go over that in just a minute. And I want you to take a look at this list. Just let it sink in for a second. Notice if there are any that stand out to you right away, any that sound familiar. White sage is pretty popular. You may have used that before. All right, so we're going to move on to the next slide. We're going to talk about the different ways in which you can use the blessing herbs. Sacred smoke and blessing herbs. The one that I don't have on here that I do want to just mention briefly is literally a sacred smoke. So you hear about things like the peace pipe that was filled with tobacco and other herbs. So one of the ways that you can participate in blessing herbs is to actually create a smoking blend. Most of the herbs listed on the page before you probably wouldn't use in this smoking blend, so that's a little bit different from what we're talking about today, but it really is in the same circle of blessing herbs. It was very common for ancient people to smoke the herbs and bless someone by blowing the smoke on them. So there's this whole idea that our breath is the breath of God, and so therefore our very breath is sacred. And in Lomi massage, that's something that I do a lot. Your breath is a big part of it. So that's one way you can do it. Mullein, for instance, mugwort, skullcap, those are all herbs that can be smoked, but you wouldn't want to smoke them on a daily basis like you would as if you were replacing cigarettes. Okay, so the first way we're going to use herbs are in resin form. Now, a lot of you are probably used to the powdered incense sticks. There's nothing inherently wrong with those, but they go through a lot of processing, and I really like to use things as whole and natural as possible. So resins are one of my favorite top ways to use certain herbs. And resins are made from the sap of a tree, so they're considered the lifeblood or the life force of a tree. And once they're dried, they can be burned on a charcoal disc. So the charcoal disc is underneath the words on this page. They come in little round shapes. You can light them on fire and they'll kind of burn and give off this really hot burning charcoal. And once you put your resin on, the resin will melt and the smoke will go up into the air and smell usually absolutely delightful. You can get these charcoal discs from Mountain Rose. I get them from a local head shop. They also fit into hookahs apparently, and so the local head shops usually carry them too. One of my favorite ways to use the blessing herbs is powders, and the powders are usually crushed versions of the plants. You can make your own powders with a mortar and pestle or a coffee grinder, and this is what they make the incense sticks or cones out of. There's a little bit more that goes into it. But sticking with the idea of keeping things simple, once you have your powdered plant, you can literally just sprinkle it onto the charcoal discs that we saw in the last slide, and it will burn as well. You need to stay a little bit more on top of it, but you can definitely use them in powder form that way. The next is smudge sticks and dried plants. So these are what most of us are used to. They're simply lit by the fire. We blow them out, and we've got the smudge going on, the smoke coming out. We do this a lot with sage, white sage or desert sage, where we can just light the plant leaf itself on fire. And the smudge sticks are made up of a variety of things. So I've seen everything from lavender, juniper, sage. I think I had one that had rosemary in it once. So these can be made up of a lot of different things. The sage goddess had some really, really gorgeous smudge sticks. So if beauty is a part of something that really helps enhance your sacred experience, you should definitely check those out. Now, you can really use the sacred smokes or the herbs even without smoking them. So simply placing them on your table or, sprinkling them in front of you is also a way to bless the space. So if you're feeling like you're in a place where the smoke is a bad idea, you can also kind of utilize the dried plants that way. Just having them around, sniffing them, sprinkling them on your skin and your hair, on the ground around you. These are all ways that you can still bless yourself or your space without the actual smoke, so don't be afraid to try that too. First blessing herb we're going to go over is probably my all-time favorite. It doesn't mean it has to be your favorite too, but it's definitely one that is familiar to a lot of people. So if you notice on the screen underneath where it says evergreen resin, there's the quote that says, like home to me. And one of the reasons why I find this so important to remember as the key words for the evergreen resin is my first year of class, we lit an piece of evergreen resin, and we meditated with the scent, and we blessed ourselves with the smoke, and we passed it around, and silently we shared in our journals. We wrote down our experience meditating with this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scent. And almost verbatim, every single one of the 15 people in my class, on their own, without talking to each other, wrote some form of, it feels like coming home, it feels like home, finally home, I'm home. And that was really powerful for me because that's really what resonated with my heart, was this feeling of coming home, and the fact that every other person in my class felt that way. You can imagine how powerful that is. Our teacher shared with us a point that really, really struck a chord with me and makes a lot of sense. I think it'll make sense to you as well. For those of us who believe in past lives, a lot of this work is in remembering. We've done this before. This is not something new, but we're remembering this information. And if you think about the evergreen trees, where do they grow? They grow almost everywhere. So if you subscribe to the idea that we've been here before and that we have past lives, which you're not required to, but if you do, it would make sense that at some point in your lifetimes, you would have been among the forests that had evergreen trees. And the symbolism of the evergreens, let's think about the trees themselves. They are strong, they are tall, they protect the animals, they protect the underneath of the forest. So they have this very beautiful, supportive energy. And think about what that feels like. Imagine if you had a friend or a lover or a mom who had that kind of energy. What would it feel like to be wrapped up in her hug? So evergreens are plant spirits of the north. There is an opening, and you'll notice as you're breathing in the evergreen resin that there's this opening of your heart chakra, of breath. The evergreens are very good for your upper respiratory system. So as you're breathing in that sacred smoke, it would seem kind of counterintuitive, but you'll feel this strong, strong opening. Evergreen has a strong connection to elder spirits or grandparent spirits. There's an ancient ancestral guidance, and when you really meditate with the evergreen resin, you can almost feel it as a tangible thing, as if your ancestors, your elders, the people watching out for you, your grandparents, are looking out, looking over your shoulder. They're right there with you. And with this wonderful elder spirit comes strength and clarity, wisdom. This is one of the plants that I really like to work with when I am struggling to make a decision. I'm not sure which way to go. I'm not feeling confident in myself. Helps support me. Evergreen resin is antifungal, antiviral, and you can also melt it down into oils. Some key words for evergreen resin would be peace, compassion, nurturing. And because of this ancient kind of feeling that you get with it, it really, really feels like the tree of life. The evergreen resin comes from the sap, which is generally wildcrafted in the spring, although sometimes you can get some good pieces of it in the fall. You can keep it in wax paper and let it dry, and then you can use it on the charcoal. Is the next of my favorites, and I apologize for the picture being a little grainy there. I didn't really realize that until just now. The special words that I pulled out for Dragon's Blood is super sultry. It's a plant spirit of the south, and it's traditionally used for protection. Now, Dragon's Blood comes in resin form. It's comes from thick, dark sap off the dragon's blood tree, and it kind of resembles blood, so that's where it gets its name from. And I added some keywords here because Dragon's Blood resin is sort of hard to define, and I really, really suggest that when you have a free moment to go get yourself some Dragon's Blood resin and meditate with it. And some of my keywords for this are sensual, sexy, zing, red, fire, energy, intensity. It's activating. It revolves around the realms of mystery and magic, love and passion, reverence, sultry prayer, confidence, filling, drinking in. Think about what all of these words summon to you. It is very sensual, very sexy, but in a very sacred way. You'll notice that sandalwood is very similar. It's a solar plexus herb, so it activates, fills, builds your confidence. There's something about Dragon's Blood that really just makes you feel incredibly full of potential, incredibly full of life, very strong, very passionate. It also covers the sacral chakra. I apologize about the extra K in the wrong spot. And you'll notice that it's very red, like your root chakra, so it could have a little bit of that going on, but it's really about connecting, bringing things together, and very fiery, beautiful, beautiful resin. And my phrase for white sage is sacred places. White sage is really popular. I use white sage a lot, and oftentimes we use white sage to clear out an area, to get rid of the negativity, but there's so many other things that we can use this plant for. So it's a plant spirit of the East, and we traditionally use it for clearing space and protection, like I just said, but it's also got some really, really amazing ancestral connections. So some of these key words are ancestral, old elder grandparent wisdom. So it's right up there with the evergreens. It's this strong grandparent wisdom. And anytime we have this ancient wisdom, it's really important to keep that sacred. We revere it. It's holy. We use it for deep healing work. So it's really not just about protection or getting rid of negative energies. It's about working through what's really getting to us. So we can do deep healing work with white sage. It helps us bring wisdom and connection to our inner guides. So it's a really, really great blessing herb to use when we're seeking that support outside of ourselves and within. It helps to connect ourselves to that inner tuition or inner being to help us feel a little bit more confident about our decision-making skills or anything that we need support with. The blessing herb itself activates our subconscious, and it keeps our mind clear. It aids in good choices and strong boundaries. So when you think about those two things together, it helps us reach into ourselves, dive into the areas that might be a bit more shadow space for us, but helps keep our judgment clear so that we're not, getting too bogged down with what's going on in those shadows. And setting, strong boundaries is important in those moments, right? It also helps to quiet down a highly sensitive nature. So if you're somebody whose mind can't slow down, or you're trying to go to sleep at night and you're having trouble, sage might be a really great herb to use as a blessing herb to bless your bedroom, bless yourself. It can be really mind altering if you want it to be. It can offer really intense soul work if that's your intention. And as my one teacher, Sage Maurer, who her name is Sage, coincidentally, she calls it a fierce witness. What does that mean? I want you to think about that for a second. When a plant is a fierce witness, what potential does that have for you? And since white sage is so common and we use it so much, the next time you pick it up or the next time you look at it, I want you to really, really take a moment to offer deep, deep gratitude and respect. You should do that for all the plants all the time, but I think we often use white sage more than we know before we know that it has this connection to it. So I really encourage you to kind of thank your white sage for all it's done for you in the past and all it will do in your future. Sandalwood. And sandalwood can be very sultry and sexy to me too. Very similar to dragon's blood, but slightly different. The term I used here for sandalwood is I am in it. And for me, sandalwood has this really beautiful, feminine, I don't think I wrote that on here, but it has this really beautiful, feminine, sacred strength and beauty to it. It really connects us to ourselves and to sacred in a really, really intense way. And you'll see here the very first sentence I wasn't even reading was it helps to connect to all that is holy and sacred in a very intimate way. Sandalwood really brings forth the idea of sacred sexuality, and it feels like it would have been the blessing herb that would have been used in those temples where women were allowed to be strong in their sexuality and be strong in their femininity and let that be spiritual in and of itself. I hope that makes sense to you. It doesn't mean that the herb necessarily has to have those sexual undertones, but for me, that's what it feels like. It helps to bring you down and into your body. So as a massage therapist, this is something that's really important to me, and part of where the I am in it comes from. A lot of times when we get stressed out, when we're going through the daily things in our life, it's really easy for us to sort of slip out of our body and live up into our shoulders, our neck, our head, so that we don't have to feel things. And sandalwood has this really amazing way of kind of bringing you down, grounding you, and make you connect with yourself on a much deeper level. So if you're feeling kind of flighty, or you're feeling a little like a space cadet, sandalwood's a really, really good blessing herb. It allows you to receive. It's essential to aid in the easy transition for those who are ready to pass on. So because it has this really sweet, deep beauty to it, it's a really good herb to use as a blessing herb for our loved ones who are getting ready to pass on to the next phase or the next world or whatever you want to call it. It relieves stress, anxiety, and pain. And if you think about all of the things that I just said about it, it would make sense that it would do those things, right? It transforms the mundane into the sacred. So I was just talking about, the strength of a woman and all her femininity, and we're going through life and all of these things are mundane, and suddenly you throw sandalwood into the mix and it very easily can turn into a meditation or turn into something sacred. There's this spiritual herbal switch that goes off, and I think that for anybody who uses the real sandalwood, like the resin or an incense stick that's made out of non-synthetic, no essential oils or anything like that. Not that essential oils are synthetic, but sometimes they use synthetic oils as essential oils. I think anybody who uses the real stuff is going to feel that sort of shift happen. It's a very shifty herb. Some keywords for sandalwood: beauty, desire, delicate yet fierce, warm, protective, filling the soul. This one's my favorite. Divine pleasure, relaxing, rich, abundant, powerful, drink of the gods, and a deep and magical dance. I was looking back over my notes when I was meditating with sandalwood, and I had sketched out a crude drawing of a belly dancer. And there was something so mystical and magical about this belly dancer and her strength, and really came forth when I was meditating with sandalwood. We're going to end on a sweet note, is with sweetgrass. And the term here for sweetgrass is sweet harmony. Sweetgrass is a blessing herb I don't use nearly enough. This herb is it's got this sweet kind of honey scent. It comes in a braid, so most of the time when you are using sweetgrass, it's not a resin and you don't burn it as a smudge stick. You get a braid of the grass and you just burn it. And this is a really great one. I'm skipping down a little bit, but it's a really, really great herb to use before any kind of confrontation, or if you're gonna have to go at it with somebody or have a really difficult conversation, you're a little bit nervous about how they'll react. Sweetgrass is a great blessing herb to use either during, before, or after this kind of a thing. So sweetgrass is an antidepressant. It helps to flood anger with harmony and peace. So it's literally called sweetgrass, and it really helps the sweetness come out of people. So anybody who's angry, frustrated, manic, sweetgrass has a tendency to help bring that down, de-escalate situations. So that makes sense when it says here, should be used while resolving conflict or confrontation. It calms and eases manic behavior and anxiety, so that sweet, gentle spirit just kind of comes in like a little pixie and wraps its arms around you and says, "It's okay, everything's fine, don't worry about it." Keywords for sweetgrass is lightness, soothing, sweet earth, simplicity, soothing calm, gentle. Soothing's on there twice. It's a very soothing herb. It's very, very gentle. One of the best herbs that you can use when you're feeling like, maybe you're not trying to necessarily use white sage to get negativity out, but maybe you're trying to promote positivity. That's what I was trying to say. So while you might use sage to get rid of negativity, sweetgrass is what you would use to bring positivity in. And sweetgrass is pretty simple, so there's not a whole lot to say about it, but that's what I really love about sweetgrass. So we've gone through all of the blessing herbs that we're going to talk about today. I hope you learned a little bit something. I hope you were inspired to try one of the blessing herbs, either one of the ones we talked about or one of the ones that you've been drawn to for a while now. I really urge you to give yourself some time to meditate with your blessing herb. So when you first get it or you're ready to use it, if you've got some already, I want you to forget about you for a minute. It's so easy to use the blessing herbs as a me tool. Get rid of my negativity. Help me feel better, right? That's what they're there for. They're tools. So it's okay to use them like that. But if we haven't had a chance to get to know them or connect with them first, it's not really fair, right? So I would really love that the next time you use a blessing herb, you dedicate that time to getting to know the blessing herb. So burning it, covering yourself in the smoke, feeling it, smelling it, play some music. Some drums are great for blessing herbs, and just let that herb know you're there to connect with it, to feel it, to be in it with it, and see what you get. Do my descriptions here accurately portray what you get from that herb? Journal with it. Make sure you write it down so you can go back and look at it later. And I'm willing to bet that the next time you use your blessing herb after that get to know each other session, for whatever you decide to use it for, it's going to be that much more powerful. So I really hope you enjoyed our Blessing Herbs class, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think about it. I hope you have a beautiful day. As always, leave any questions in the comments section, and I will make sure to answer them for you.